Hi there once again and welcome to another Expresso Mechanic tutorial, and this will be episode 18 in the series Expresso Nuts and Bolts. And in this particular episode what we're going to be doing is taking a little bit of a deep dive into the bounding box node, and we'll take a look at the functionality and then a couple of potential uses for it. That's what we're going to be about in this tutorial, so without further ado, let's see if we can make this happen. We'll start by bringing in a cube, and we'll leave it at its default settings. We don't really need to change it for what we're going to be doing here. I'll bring in a null, call it Expresso, give it the Expresso tag, and we've got the editor open and we're ready to have a little go at this. The first thing to do will be to bring in the cube, and at the output stage we'll give it an object port. And then we can bring in the bounding box, which is up here. And we'll plumb in our object. Now, we can see that we've got three outputs as standard. So box minimum, box maximum, and box size. Let's bring in a result node and see what happens when we plumb something in. We're getting 0 there, and there. So clearly something isn't working. So what's going on? Well, at the moment our cube is a parametric cube, and the bounding box only works with geometric objects. So we'll select our cube and hit C to make it editable, and then we can start plumbing this in. Now at the output here, if we just get our port information, we can see that there's a vector type. So our result needs to be a vector type so that we can see what's going on properly. So at the box minimum, if we imagine the bounding box is literally surrounding our cube and it's hugging it closely, we've got -100, -100, and -100 in the minimum. And that makes sense because if we look at our cube along the x-axis, we know that our cube, if we just bring the dimensions up here, we know that our cube is 200 by 200 by 200. So the minimum values will be -100 because they're -100 in all of these directions. So along the x, y, and z axes, they're going to be -100. So the box maximum is going to be 100, 100, and 100 because they're all in the positive directions in that case. So 0 is here, the edge of the cube is 100, and the same for all the others. And then the box size, well, it's obviously going to be 200 by 200 by 200 because it's what we've got down here. So that's how those three actually work. Now, if we were to bring in another cube, we'll just drop this one here. We'll move it away from our original cube, just if I can get a hold of it. Let's just make the original cube disappear so I can get hold of this. That's it, and just move it out of the way. Just zoom out a little bit. Just place it there. What I'll do is bring this cube in, and we'll leave this one parametric because we can, and we'll just, at the input stage, add a size port. Okay. And then using our box size, if we get a math node, place it here, plumb this in here, and we'll change the function to multiply. And we'll just say multiply by 2, and then we plumb this into our size. Instantly we've got a cube that's twice the size. So proportionality is something that you could use this for. It's one possible function for the box size. If we said 0.5, then obviously we're inverse proportional. So it can be used for this if you wish to. That's one possible use for the bounding box. Not necessarily the greatest use, but it's there if you wanted to use it. And of course, if you start playing around with the size of this particular cube, our other cube is going to adjust accordingly. So if we make this 100, we can see things have changed there just simply by doing that. So it does give you a degree of control in a quite simple way. So that's one potential use. If we look down here though at our output stage, we can see that we've got the points of our bounding box, and there are 8 of them because of course it's going to be a cube itself. So if we output 0.1 here, and let's just bring in a text spline, we'll make it somewhat smaller, make it something like 20. Just bring this up here so that we can see it. That looks about right. And I'm going to change the font to Lemon Milk Pro. You can use whatever font you choose. Let's see where we are. Get my Lemon Milk Pro. There it is. We've got that there. If we just get a bit closer to our cube and our text so that we can see what we're doing, we can then bring this in and we can just give this point position to the position of our text. And straight away it's come down here. So our first point is at the bottom left corner of our cube. Now I happen to know that point number 4 is at the top right. So if I plumb that in there, straight away our text moves to over here. And we can work with our text. If we say right, we've placed our text just above our cube and we've given it effectively an annotation, haven't we? So we can also bring in the 3D GUI and just make a slight adjustment to our text so that it isn't touching the box. If we just move it upwards, place it somewhere around there. And then, as I say, we've now annotated our cube. And of course, we can just type cube in here if we wish to, just to give it that little bit of extra meaning. And we've got that there. Now, in our bounding box, if we click on here, we've got matrix mode, we've got global, and we've got local. Now, if we select local and we move our cube, we just leave the text there. So if we want the text to move with the actual cube, we need to select global, and then we can move our cube and everything's fine. It all moves with it. So that's important. We've also got use deformed points here. Well, we'll bring in another scene and have a look at this there, because that's quite interesting actually. This can be used in quite a nice way. So what we'll do, we've got our first scene set up and we've had a good look at what we can do with the various different ports that we can bring out of the bounding box node. Let's move to another project and we'll start with this one and see what we can do here. We'll start by going to our asset browser over here and type puppet, and we've got our male puppet here. Now I'll just bring him in and drop him into the scene, and we'll get rid of his character, or at least we'll make it invisible. We don't want to see it. That's fine. He's ready to go in his T-pose, and then we can move on from here. So we'll type mocap, and we want a running loop, and it's this one, running jump B loop. That's the one that I'm planning to use. So let's bring that into our scene, and we've got it there. Moving on from here, we need to set things up. So with our male puppet character, we've got our tag on him, the character solver. We just need a source character, and that needs to be our running jump B loop, and straight away he's in the correct pose and he's ready to go. Now at the moment he'll only run on the spot. We don't want that. The next thing we need to do is get a hold of our puppet, and we need to drop him into here, and then he should run, and he does. That's perfectly good. We'll just close the asset browser up here. Let's close that up, because then he'll run faster. That's brilliant, and we can see that he's running and jumping. Let's just set the camera up. See what we get now. Well, we need a few more frames. Let's give ourselves, I don't know, 400. That'll do nicely. Probably too many, but that's okay. Yeah, so he's running along. We've still got a bit more to go. Yeah, great. Looking really nice. Now at the moment, our character is a bit bland. He hasn't got much going on with him. He's just doing his running and jumping, and although it's very nice, we can probably enhance things a little bit more. So what we'll do, if we, in fact, what we'll do, give ourselves 230 frames. That should be enough. And that's, let's see what we've got now. Yeah, that's looking nice. I mean, if you want to, you can put a track in and some obstacles. I did do that in my original file, but I'm not going to bother here just for the sake of the tutorial, because I just want to get on with things. But yeah, it's all working as I need it to. Now, at the moment, our character, he's just running along. If we wanted to annotate him, that may be quite nice. So let's, again, bring in some text in the text spline. We'll drop this down to a reasonable size. Again, let's say 20. Just move it up and move it above our character, and then just hit O for object so that we're closer. See where we are. So we're a little bit behind our object, actually. Let's just go back to 0. A little bit behind our character. We're now just about with him. Okay. Again, I'm going to use Lemon Milk Pro for this. So let's just find that. Lemon Milk Pro. And we'll give our character a name. We'll name him Max after Maxon. And we'll also drop this into an extrude. And with our extrude, we'll make this about 2. And in our caps, we'll put a little bit of rounding on it, say 0.2, just to give it a little bit of rounding there. And then with the extrude, we can just give it a colour. Just make it yellow so that it stands out. Okay, cool. So we've got it that far. Now, we'll bring in a null, call it Expresso, and give it the Expresso tag. And now we're ready to start thinking about placing Max above our character. So let's think about what we're going to do here. The first thing to do is twirl open our mail puppet mesh here and bring in the head. And at the output, we'll give it an object port. We can then bring in our bounding box and connect the two. So we'll just plumb this in here. And at the output stage, we'll add a 0.4 or box 0.4 port. We can then, we'll just rename the extrude Max so that we distinguish it. We'll just bring this in, and our 0.4, we can give this to the position. Straight away, Max jumps up to here. Now, let's see what we can do. For a start, our text is a little bit large. Let's make it 15. That looks better. And we'll align it right. That's already helped us a little bit. But with the 3D GUI, let's just bring that in. And if we can just move this slightly over, I think that will work quite nicely. It just puts it dead above his head. And that looks really good. So we've got things set up, and we can run the animation and just see what happens. Let's just zoom out so that we can see what's going on. And if we run that, we can see it's okay. His name is following along behind him, really, isn't it? And it's sort of okay. But for my money, it could look a lot better if it bobbed up and down with the motion of him running. Now, we can do that really easily. If we select our bounding box, all we've got to do is say use deform points. And straight away, we can see that that's moved. It's reacting to him already. And now it's looking a lot better, I think. We can make some adjustments on the text because it's not quite in the right place. So if we go back to our 0 point, and once again, we'll hit O for object so that we can see where we are. Yeah, I mean, we can see that it needs to move a little bit higher. So what we can do, once again with our text, we've got the GUI. We've got the GUI. I should put some new teeth in. We've got the GUI. Let's have a look and see what we can do here. Yeah, if we just select this arrow, we can move this a little bit higher, just so that it floats nicely above his head. And that should I think, solve the problem. I mean, if we needed to, we could always move this back. We could play around with the GUI again and move it around. We can probably just move it slightly further over this way, I think, now. But that looks pretty good. I mean, you know, play around with this to your heart's content, but that, I think, will work for me. If we just bring this over here and let's see what happens. Yeah, and that's looking nice. Yeah, I mean, that's much more dynamic. I just think that's a much nicer effect, having that bounce around with him as he runs along. If that had a bit of motion blur on it, I think that would look quite nice. But yeah. So that's what you can use your deform points for. If you've got a situation like we've got here, you know, because it looks, I mean, really that effectively is a dynamic effect without actually using dynamics. So it's quite a nice way to do it. Yeah, looking really good. So yes, that is how you go about using the bounding box. I mean, there's a couple of uses I've shown you there. I mean, you may be able to find some others, but yeah, it's a funny sort of node, a bit of an insignificant node really, but it can have its uses. I mean, I've used it for doing stuff like I'm doing here. I thought it was really good for that, especially with dynamic objects. As I say, it just brings it alive. But yeah. And that effectively brings us to the end of this tutorial, because I've shown you what I wanted to in this one. And as always, I really hope you've enjoyed doing this one and that it's given you a few ideas and perhaps inspired you to do a few things within your own projects that could possibly incorporate this. And if you have enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and of course, ring the bell. And wherever you happen to be on social media, please do share this video, because all this good stuff really does help keep the channel moving in the right direction. But anyway, that just about brings the curtain down on this one. So I'll see you very soon on the next tutorial.